All right, I'm here with Ben Sharf, co-founder and co-CEO of Platter. He started Platter in 2022. They sell to Shopify brands, and it's a toolkit to help them improve profitability. They're 26 people and multi-seven figures in ARR. And obviously, you're super prolific on LinkedIn. You have a podcast, so you're very much a practitioner of founder-led marketing. So I wanted to have you on the show. So thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me today.
Cool. Was that a fair enough definition of Platter? Anything you want to add to it or correct there in terms of what
Oh
you
no,
guys
it
are
was good.
building?
We basically just help Shopify brands improve profitability on their storefront with the technology that we build.
Very cool. How did you end up getting into this space? Have you always been in ecom?
Yeah, it was actually a little bit of a coincidence. Before I started this company, I was working at a company called GoPuff, if you're familiar. And I happened to work on an e-commerce business unit at GoPuff, where we were essentially trying to figure out a way to enable instant delivery via the .com website.
Mm-hmm.
So you can buy a product on a website and have it delivered in under 30 minutes, which was pretty revolutionary. And so through that time, I found myself working with direct to consumer brands exclusively for a long period of time. And from that, had a really good understanding of how their businesses were being operated, and ultimately found what I thought was like a white space and an opportunity to jump into that world in a more meaningful way. So spent a year at GoPuff and then started Platter after that.
Cool. And so obviously I think you're just below 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. You pop up on my feed regularly. When and how did that journey start? Like what was the initial thing where you said I should be doing this, and then what was kind of the journey there up until now?
Yeah, I think I probably had a similar journey to a lot of the founders who are adamant about posting content, which is like you thought about it way before you actually started doing it.
Right.
Right. So like I've thought about doing it for a while, dabbled in some content stuff before and at the early days of Platter. And then I think about almost a year ago at this point, I kind of just realized that I needed to go all in and commit to it. I think that in a world of like oversaturation of marketing channels, like the one thing that's defensible is community and authenticity as it relates to like a founder telling their story. And so I think that a lot of people want to hear the things that you don't talk about in like traditional marketing funnels per se. Um, and I think the other piece too is when I realized some of the opportunities that people around me were getting by just sharing their story, I kind of was just asking myself, like, why am I not sharing my story?
Sure. Yeah. Was there any particular tipping point that made you go from debating it, dabbling into it, to say, I'm going all in?
I think there were just like glimpses of like opportunity that was coming from it. And I think really more than that, when I thought about like, what is my superpower? What is my value back to the business? I think, as a founder, you need to be able to be competent in a lot of different areas. But I think to the extent that you can maximize spending as much time as possible in your zone of genius, I think that's like the way that you give yourself the best chance to win. And for me, a lot of that is relationship building, storytelling. And so I realized that like the best thing that I can do for this company is like amplify our story and get it in front of as many people as possible. And I think a big way to do so is by being just like raw and authentic through my own voice on social media. Because I think the other thing that a lot of people don't know is a lot of the opportunities that you get from posting on social media are not necessarily, and I actually posted about this the other day, but they're not always from the person that's liking every post and commenting on every post. There's so many people that are watching what you're doing that you just never even knew. And I think the other
Lurkers.
thing that I'll say is that, like, when you think about just the network effects of social media, one post, the fact that you can get one unique thought and potentially in front of millions of people, like, there's no other medium to do that. So, like, you're just doing
Sure.
yourself a disservice by not doing it, is ultimately like the mindset that I had. And I think now I also realize that a big part of it is just staying in the game long enough and staying consistent. And I remind myself that everyone had that first cringe post that they put out. But the question that I always ask to people who are like, "Oh, I'm scared of being judged," I'll be like, "What's your favorite podcast?"
Mhm.
You know what? I'll pose the question to you. What's your favorite podcast that you listen to?
Man, probably the one I listen to the most is All In.
Do you remember the first episode they put out?
No.
That's the point. People
Yeah.
don't remember. You just got to post and keep moving. Like
Right.
it's always weird and cringe until it's not. Everyone had that first post. You have to just like put it behind you and think about just getting 1% better every day.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said, about a year ago, you went all in, what did that mean, practically speaking?
I think it's just like making it a priority. Like instead of, I think oftentimes a lot of founders were like, I wanted to post content, but then I got busy. Then I had to do this. Then I had to do that. And it's like, how do you reframe your thinking? We're like, that's actually the important thing.
Mm,
And you realize like it's very easy to get stuck in busy work. It's very easy to find something else to do because you're shying away from the thing that makes you uncomfortable
yeah.
versus just like committing to it and actually acknowledging how important it is. Like it's a very important part of my day to day. Like I'm always going to have other things to do, but like that needs to happen.
Yeah. And logistically, did you just say I'm gonna post every day? Did you say I know some people who block off like half of Sunday to just write 3 posts and then schedule them out. Like how logistically did you fit it in?
That's a really interesting question. I think that's been something that I've been on like a learning journey for the last year to kind of figure out what works for me. I think what you I think what you realize is that everyone is different and everyone operates differently, and so you have to find what works for you. For me, I think of content as more of like an engine, like a business in and of itself. So I'm not someone that will like sit down for 4 hours on a Sunday necessarily and like block off or write a full week worth of content. But for me, it's like I have different people in my ecosystem that help with a very specific thing, whether it's like copywriters, video editors, producers. Like I have people who are helping every step of the way
Yeah.
because for me, like I'm like very ADHD. Like I can't like sit down for 3 hours and just like write a bunch of posts. But it's
Yeah.
like I can riff on ideas, give people original thoughts who can help me come up with scripts. Like I can come up with ideas and then have people who are a little bit more technical, like help me bring it to life. So I have actually like really built it more as like an operation than just like one guy in a corner, like writing content. Not to
Yeah.
say that I don't respect those people, just like for better, for worse, like it's just never been like that for me.
Was hiring these people and by obviously by that nature also paying money part of the initial let's go all in, or did you go all in first, get started, and then learn, oh, I could use some help with video editing? Like what was the, let's say, order of
Yeah,
steps?
I think it was doing some stuff on my own at a micro level just to see how I enjoyed it. Like, was I good at it? Is it something I could see myself wanting to do? And then from there, I knew that like if I wanted to optimize for consistency above all else, that I would have to be willing to like put money against it. Which again, like that's not something that everyone agrees with. I bet you most people would disagree with that. But my whole mentality was around how do I optimize for consistency and not virality, and like
Hmm.
figure out how to do that thing. So for
Yeah.
me, it's like if I can build the system and I have the budget to build the system, I can do this for a long period of time.
Yeah, love it. Now, since 12 months ago when you had your first cringe post, and now 12 months later, I think I saw your stats. You had 1.6 million impressions over the last 12 months. What are some of the insights, lessons, mistakes, like things that you know now that you didn't know back then that stand out to you?
It's typically the posts that you spend the least amount of time on that end up being the ones that people actually care about the most.
Interesting.
I think the more unapologetic and raw you are, like people can sense that through content. And then I think the other thing too is you need to stop looking at vanity metrics and just like flex the muscle. Right?
Mm,
Like there's people who get insecure, like, oh, what if this only gets 5 likes? What if I only get one comment? It's like, who gives a shit?
right.
Like that's not the point. The point is that you're telling a story to a certain set of people or an audience that you want to get it in front of. So do it long enough and you will find people that will gravitate towards you for whatever your message is or because they resonate with something that you said or did.
Yeah. Was there a moment, and maybe that was the same moment where you decided to go all in, but was there a moment where it clicked and it went from let me try this, let me see if it works, I'm not sure if it's going to impact the business, to oh no, like this is doing something and I need to be doing this?
I think a big piece of it, to be honest, was just being exposed to a lot of founders and creators around me, where I've just like watched what's happened to them for their own individual brands and their businesses. And for the longest time, like when I was early in this consumer world, I was helping a lot of friends and brands and creators. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm just like sitting on the sidelines watching these people get the most insane opportunities because they're telling their story. Like, I don't need any more like data points to know that this is the thing that I should be doing.
Sure. Yeah. And then is LinkedIn your main thing, or do you also do X? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, but LinkedIn is definitely more of a focus.
Yeah.
I think that Instagram is something that I want to start leaning into a little bit more this year, but haven't really done it
Interesting.
yet. But again, working through details to figure out like how can I do that in a way that's sustainable. Because I just,
Instagram, because of your ICP with kind of D2C, ecom, Shopify brands?
yeah, there's a lot of consumer brands in that world.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of Adam Robinson, kind of like the
Yeah,
poster
of
child
course.
of doing LinkedIn and founder branding. And obviously, one thing that he talks about a couple times is that for him it clicked when he went from for retention.com talking to an ICP of Shopify brands and D2C and ecom brands to with our B2B focusing on the kind of B2B go to market type persona, partly because of his expertise, but also partly because he felt like LinkedIn is just a much stronger platform for that ICP. They're more active. So I'm curious to hear your take, given that you're actually talking to that ICP that he's a little bit shitting on in terms of, hey, LinkedIn was not super strong for me back then.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like finding the platforms that bode well with like your personality, and then also just figuring out a way to like leverage relationships and your network to work for you. And I
Yeah.
just think a lot of like the world that I'm in is a lot of people who also live in the world of Instagram. And I also know a couple people who uh, have really found a lot of success getting in front of consumer brands on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all to say that it's something that I plan to test, and we'll see if I find value in it or not. I just believe like if you have an audience and you have a platform, it makes it a lot easier to get in front of people and to talk to people,
Yeah.
especially with podcasts and things like that, because people want to leverage your audience to tell their story.
Sure. How do you think about for you specifically, given your situation with the ICP? What's the biggest benefit for you of doing founder-led marketing on LinkedIn?
I just think that it builds trust and authenticity, and also when you meet people, there's a weird there's a weird element of it of like they feel like they kind of knew you before they actually met you. Like they
Mm-hmm.
kind of know what you stand for, they know what your business does. We've had a couple big deals that we've closed that were inbound messages on LinkedIn that were like, "Hey, been following your content for the last 6 months. We're now getting ready to like move over to Shopify. Would love to talk."
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think that's the thing that people forget how much of this is just compounding. And like I noticed this last year. I mean, I'm obviously a big believer, and I stopped posting for 2.5 months because I was busy with like onboarding and training people, and I thought I could just stop and pick it back up. But I just lost all momentum, and it literally took me after starting again after that 2.5 month break, another 3 months of actually seeing the whole momentum being picked up, where people start reaching out and you get tagged on things and invited on podcasts, because it's like it takes a while of you showing up consistently where people are like, oh, this dude is trustworthy. And um,
Yeah, you're here to stay.
what's the thinking around the podcast? I know you and the Verbatim founder, I think you guys are
Adrian.
co-hosting. Adrian are co-hosting a podcast, Turning Pro, I think was the name. What is that? What's the? Is it just for fun? Is it a specific strategy around that? What's the story around the podcast?
No, I mean most of the founders that and people that we've had on it to date are brand founders, e-commerce software founders, some
Yep.
creators. I think that a podcast is a really great relationship building tool. I don't think you need to shy away from the fact that you can admit it's a networking ploy. Like when you have a platform that someone can tell their story on, it's like you're giving them some sort of value up front, so they don't feel like you're just asking them for shit. So I think it's a couple things for me. It's relationship building with people that I want to build relationships with. It's an additional stream of content that could be used for like cross promotion for my brand. And candidly, the third thing is it's my dedicated learning time. I love
Mhm.
learning through conversation. I like to talk to people that are a lot smarter than me because they're going to tell me things I don't already know.
Yeah. I think there's I talk about it sometimes. I call it the halo effect. I don't know the ecom world so much, but I think if you get big people on and they're on your show, that by association just builds a lot of credibility. Like when I had, Henry Schuck of Zoom Info on, or, Alina Vanderberger from Chili Pepper, just having these people on next to me feels like, oh, this guy must be doing something right because he's getting these people on his show. Even if they might not be customers or stuff like that.
It's crazy the amount of inbound requests I get for people asking to come on the show.
Nice.
And it's because like, oh, I saw you interviewed this person. Like, I would love to tell you my story also, which is like
Yeah.
funny to me because I think it goes back to the philosophy or principle that I said early on around like you can't get fixated by vanity metrics. So I always laugh to myself, like, why does this person want to come on my podcast? They have like 1,000 subscribers and like I get like 500 listens on episodes. Like, it's not
Yeah.
like you're broadcasting your story to millions of people, but it just
Yeah.
shows you that like you're right. The halo effect and the association game is so real.
Plus, I think what people don't realize is really nice about podcasts. People can't see how many listens you get. I mean, on YouTube they get, but usually when they just go on Spotify, there's no way of knowing if you have 5 listens or 5,000. And so that's actually really nice, because they can just see, oh, you had 40 episodes and you had some big name people on there. It must be legit thing. So let me get on there.
Totally,
Um,
but I think it's like I'm also like authentic and honest about it, right? Like I don't want to be chasing the vanity metrics and then if someone's interested or not interested because of how many likes or subscribers or comments I get, like I don't know if it's
sure.
actually the best conversation.
Do you guys do any sort of follow up with the podcast? Like, say after a week, oh, thank you for coming on, looked at your Shopify store, maybe we could help here? Or is it just really,
No, it's way more authentic than that. It's more like I think of relationships in decades. It's more like, hey, here's what I do. If you're interested, you know where to find me. I'm not like hard pitching, hard
yeah,
selling.
yeah,
Because there's also you need to be like methodical about relationship building and like soft selling what you're doing. But like, I've also had a couple customers come on the podcast and they authentically will talk about the business too. So then that's more content that can be reposted. So there's just like a lot of benefits from doing it. So long as you can um, systemize it in a way where it's not like overly time consuming. Cause like I said, I think of content as a business operation because I am building a business. So I can't spend 8 hours a day like building content.
any tips for founders who are debating starting a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have extreme perspectives on this, but it depends like how you want to do it. I always said I only wanted to do an in-person podcast because I think the magic touch of like in-person conversation is very different. Um, so if you are going to go that route, I think again, it's not necessarily something everyone has access to be able to do. But if you want to optimize for consistency, like knowing that not that many podcasts monetize, like if you can build your own studio in house, have your own space, so you're not beholden to other people. I think that's a big one. And then the other one for me is bulk recording episodes.
Mm,
So like I'll do 3 or 4 episodes in a day and we only release weekly. So I'll usually just film once a month for the podcast.
yeah, yeah. And then any tips on guest outreach? How do you get big name people on? Any tips there?
It's been all network. That like I've never done like a cold email or a cold message to get a guest on the podcast to this point. It's been people in the network or people who recommend other people in my network. So I can't really speak to like I haven't really gone on offense yet per se of like here's a
Yeah.
list of 20 dream guests. Like I'm gonna do whatever the hell I can to like figure out how to get them.
Yeah. But do you then ask guests like, hey, who do you know that could be on? Or how do you source next?
I haven't done a great job of doing that. I think I need to do a better job of that. Um, I think it's really just every time I meet someone or talk to someone, I will make a note to myself like this is a good person for the podcast in the future.
When you think about, I mean, it looks like Platter is growing and is growing nicely. When you think about, your growth, where does founder-led marketing fit in there, both the LinkedIn and then the podcast? Is it like, yeah, it's like 2%, it's like nice that I do it, it's more like for the long-term benefit? Or is it like, no, I think this is 50% of why we're growing? Like, where within that range?
Yeah, I mean, I think the context would be that we have no sales team and very little marketing budget. I would say a large majority of the growth we've had to date have come through relationships derived from like content storytelling.
Wow. So that sounds like maybe even more than 50%.
Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty impressive. What is then next for you in this year? Is it just, I mean, you mentioned Instagram, maybe that's the one. Is it just staying consistent, staying in the game, or do you have any like ideas or thoughts of how you want to take it to the next level?
Yeah, I think I'm potentially going to hire a part-time videographer who's going to help formalize some more stuff and allow me to increase my output.
And
I've
like
just
follow
like
you
built,
around
yeah, but not
daily
like a
V?
full, yeah, not like a daily vlog thing, but it's like if I could get some more B-roll content that could have like storytelling put over top of it, maybe like a vlog a month, but also like someone who can help produce the podcast and also just like help with some of the other like founder-led content stuff. I think the
Yeah.
short answer to the question is just like I want to like lean in even more because I see the value of it.
Sure. I saw you posted like this mini vlog the other day, like a vertical video of like the day in the life of you as a founder, I think. I mean, to me, it's quite easy to explain what the value of a, let's say, thought leadership piece of content is. Where if your ICP is Shopify brand owners, and you create a piece where you talk about, what a Shopify brand owner might be able to do to increase profitability, right? Like that's valuable content to them. They associate you as an expert, and then they might become a customer for exactly what you do. When you think about the value of doing something like that, how do you think about it?
It's humanizing your like persona, right? It's like showing that you're a real human. You're not just like posting how to increase your profitability on your storefront every day. Because if you just hammer people with the same boring message, like you're just uninteresting.
Right. Do you see that it attracts a similar audience in terms of relevant people, or is it more other founders? Is it more, I don't know, young ambitious people who want to start a company but haven't yet?
I think it attracts other founders, and I also just think it builds deeper relationships with the people who are already consuming your content because it's a way for them to feel like they know you more than they really do. Like to that point I made before, it's like you meet a brand for the first time, but they're like, "Oh yeah, I've been following your content. Like I know that you like to sauna on cold plunge. I know that you like to box. Like I know that you love consumer brands, right?" Like
Yeah.
it's just like it's a way for me to feel like you can just get one step closer to uh like giving these people a glimpse into your life outside of just like the boring monotonous parts of building the business. And also it's actually shedding light on the fact that a lot of it is boring and monotonous as well, because
Right.
oftentimes on social media you just see the highlights, you don't always get to see like the exciting stuff that's happening.
What do you think about the idea? I think Adam Robinson talks about of like weird inbound, that part of the reason of doing this stuff is also, yeah, I mean, if you get a Shopify brand who is your ICP come inbound, that's really great. But you also get a bunch of like random stuff, like maybe it's an investor, or maybe it's a person who is this young person who just finished college, and they're like, I just want to work at your company, and I don't have any skills, but I just want to help you somehow. And like stuff like that. Do you see that? Do you agree with that?
I mean, yeah, I get a ton of it. I think it's on you to just like be honest with yourself and you have a filter mechanism.
Right.
I've raised money because of my LinkedIn. I've hired some amazing talent because of my LinkedIn. I've closed some amazing brands because of my LinkedIn. I've got asked to speak on panels because of my LinkedIn. Like, I've gotten a glimpse of it at a micro scale. So now I'm like, what if I do this for the next 5 years?
Hmm. And is it pure inbound, or do you do any sort of signal based outbound where you look at people who visit your profile, who engage with your content, send them a message, anything of that sort?
I do none of that right now. The extent of what I would do is if I see that someone lands on the website and they're in
Hmm.
e-commerce, I'll request them on LinkedIn, and it's manual. It's not like an automated thing, but I
Yeah.
don't do any of the intent-based type behaviors. I probably should, to be honest. But I don't. Maybe that's like the next step.
Sure. Yeah, interesting. And then do you have any tool stack that you use? Analytics, posting, I don't know. What's your go-to-market stack, let's say, between everything? It's not just LinkedIn, but what do you use?
I really don't use any of the like little tools.
You don't use Clay for anything, enrich some stuff?
No. My head of growth uses Clay for like
Okay.
Platter, but I'm not
Okay.
like using it necessarily for my own personal content engine.
Got
But
it. Got it.
we're dabbling with a handful of different like tools for enriching leads and like sourcing things for Platter. But when it comes to like my content, it's just a lot more simple than that.
Yeah. What's the non-obvious stuff? I mean, when maybe founders listen to this, it sounds almost quite simple. It's like, talk about your journey, talk about what you're learning, talk about your insights, post regularly, just make it a priority and then stick with it and stuff will happen. Is there any I know lots of people who've been doing it for 12 months and they're nowhere near where you are. They're nowhere near 1.6 million impressions. They're nowhere near, having it be a major driver of, hundreds of thousands of millions of revenue in terms of growth. Is there anything non-obvious that you feel like is contributing to why it's working for you?
I think a big piece of it is that a lot of people make the assumption that everyone already knows the things you're thinking. So when you're like a subject matter expert at something, it becomes like second nature to you and feels so obvious, but you have to understand that it's not obvious to those around you. So I think like the way that I would describe that is when you're early on in like your entrepreneurial career and you get on the phone with someone who has like a big title at a big company, you almost
Mm,
don't want to say something because you don't want to sound like stupid. But when you start to like get your reps in and be around successful people, you realize that simplifying things is actually a superpower, and
yeah,
you're not going to say something that's going to offend someone where they're like, yeah, obviously I knew that. So I think people get too in their head about it and they try to be all like fancy and, unique, but it's
yeah,
just like not that complicated.
yeah.
And it doesn't
Interesting.
have to be that complicated.
How do you get out of that mode? Lots of people definitely over polish their content. Lots of people are definitely scared to, let's say, ruffle some feathers or say some unpopular things, because what if some big customer of theirs sees it and thinks something of them that they don't want to think? What's the story you're telling yourself in your head of why it's okay to be raw and maybe say some things that might ruffle some feathers?
I think so long as you stay within the confines of like having morals and like being able to read the room to know when like something's appropriate versus not. I've never met someone who's like, yeah, I was posting content for 2 years and things just went south.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And,
Unless you focus too
the
much
other
on the
thing I'll
clickbait.
say when it comes to like the concept of like insecurity or fear of judgment is that I think content is actually a really good mechanism to filter out people in your life that are not actually in your corner.
Mm,
Because if someone is like criticizing you for posting content or making fun of you, typically that stems from a place of insecurity and they actually envy it. And their way of like showing you that is by trying to pull you down. And so I think if you just trust that like people who give a shit about you will be there for you regardless of what you do and what you say,
yeah.
I think that goes a long way in terms of like eliminating that mental block that you might be feeling.
Yeah. Who do you currently get inspiration from on this stuff? Who do you feel like is doing a really, really good job that you're looking at?
It's a really good question. I have a couple friends that are doing a really good job on LinkedIn. I have a friend, Andy Cloyd, who's the founder of Super Affiliate.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend named Noah Friedman, who's the founder of a alcohol venture fund. Um, Another friend, Mark Brazil, who's a brand founder, really good storyteller. Not as much on LinkedIn, more Instagram. But I actually tend to like to look closer to those around me and in my circles um, versus like a lot of these bigger figureheads because I think there's an element of relatability that's really helpful.
Right.
Like it's easy to look at like for example, I think Gary Vee is super inspiring and he definitely like subconsciously probably made me realize post content, but it's a little
Right.
bit harder to relate to someone who's got millions of followers and like billions of dollars when you're just like a young kid trying to like post your first content online, even
Right.
though his message is like, just do it, just do it. It's a lot easier to be inspired by those around you that you feel like are in the same like circles as you, because it just
Yeah.
feels more relatable.
Yeah. I often feel like, I don't know how you feel. I often get more I don't know if more inspired, but I get outside of my comparing myself by looking at people on other platforms. Because when I'm on LinkedIn and I see someone doing well, like my brain kicks in. I'm like, man, I should have thought of this. I could do this, and I get like kind of jealous a little bit. But when I see someone crushing on like Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, I'm like, that's really dope, and I could maybe incorporate some of those ideas into my own content on a different platform.
Yeah, look, I think content consumption is really for people who also create. It's just like additional inputs to help like reframe how you think about things, learn from people who are doing well, so on and so forth. But like someone else's success isn't the reason you're going to fail or succeed. So there's no reason to like beat yourself up that they got there and you didn't.
What's your best guess on how much time you're currently spending per week on founder-led marketing? LinkedIn, podcast, engaging, comments, thinking about posts, like all of it.
Do you want to guess and then I can give you the answer?
10 hours per week.
No, I would say probably 3.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty good. And do
It's
you feel
very
like
systemized.
that's already too much or too little? Do you feel like you should be ramping that up? Is that the exact sweet spot?
I think there's probably room for me to be doing a little bit more, to be honest. Um, yeah, it's something that I think about. I think there's probably ways to lean into it more. I think it's just work on getting a little bit more disciplined and habitual about it in certain instances.
If you could only keep the podcast or the LinkedIn, which one would you keep?
If I could only keep my podcast or my LinkedIn profile, definitely my LinkedIn,
Why?
unfortunately. Because
Unfortunately.
for the business that I'm in right now and like the opportunities that have happened, like it's way more quantifiable for my LinkedIn than my podcast today.
If you had to further cut down your time, what are the few things that you would focus on? Obviously, getting out content, but besides writing a post and getting it out, what are some of the other key things that are absolutely crucial to do?
You're saying if I could spend more time on it than I am
No,
now,
if
or
you
is
had
it
to cut down your time, what are the few things that are like must do's? Like without doing this, it just won't work.
as it pertains to content
Yeah,
specifically?
yeah, yeah.
I mean, I just don't really think it's viable to spend any less time than that on it, because it's like you need to come up with ideas, you need to create ideas, you need to like produce the ideas. And it's at what point where you just completely diminishing the quality where it's not even interesting for someone to like want to read or watch because it's just like dog shit.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Last question. I always like asking it. What do you hate most about it?
What do I hate most about it? I would say probably um the feeling of failure. If there's like days that go by where I'm maybe not going to be posting, where you kind of feel
Mm,
like you're letting yourself down. Like I think it becomes in some ways, not that it's a burden, but it feels like it's a job, and you feel like you're not doing your job if you're not delivering.
sure.
So I think just like there's days that go by where maybe I wasn't feeling inspired to make content, but like I know I need to. Like those moments can be hard, right? Because then you think about one day, like, oh, maybe there's a world where I can just delete this and never have to think about it again because it's just like top of mind. But I think you just learn how to like work through that.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. If people want to check you out or check out Platter, I'll link up both your LinkedIn profile and then Platter, and I'll also link up your podcast in the show notes so people could check that out. Any last thing you want people to know? Anything I should have asked that I didn't ask that you want to mention?
Start posting content.
Hey, let's go. All right, thank you, Ben.